Hey guys, it's Buddha Jim, and yes, we're still talking about race and IQ. In this video, we're going to take a moment to step back and look at the issue from a larger perspective. Due to time constraints, I can always catch a very general picture of the history of scientific racism, but you're going to find a ton of great links in the sidebar to these videos that will supplement what I'm talking about. One of the problems with Stodle's videos is he gives the impression, at least appears to me, that this is new information, new ideas. They're not. Scientific racism is actually quite old. The intelligence test of the 19th century focused on the physical measurements of skulls, either the outside by ruler and caliper, and by constructing various indices and ratios for the shapes and sizes of heads, or the inside, and by constructing, they would use mustard seed or lead shot to fill the cranium and measure the volume of brain case. The 20th century moved to the supposedly more direct method of measuring the content of the brain by intelligence testing. In short, from measuring the physical properties of skulls to measuring the interior stuff in brains. Wikipedia has a pretty good article on scientific racism to give you some measure of historic perspective on the issue of race and intelligence. Consider the following. Dutch scholar Peter Camper from 1722 to 1789 was one of the first theorists of craniometry, the measure of skulls which he used to justify racial differences. In 1770, he invented, in one of his numerous memoirs, the concept of the facial angle, the measurement to determine intelligence among various species. According to this technique, a facial angle was formed by drawing two lines, one horizontal, that would go from the nostril to the ear, and the other perpendicular from the advancing part of the jawbone to the most prominent part of the forehead. Camper claimed that antique statues presented an angle of 90 degrees, Europeans of 80, black people 70 degrees, and the orangutan of 58 degrees, thus displaying a hierarchic and racist view of mankind based on a decadent conception of history. The scientific racist research, it was continued by Saint Hilaire, 1722 to 1844, and someone we'll talk about more, Paul Broca, from 1824 to 1880. So if you look back at the history of scientific racism, what you essentially see are ever-changing justifications for a priori conclusions that whites are superior to blacks. Skin pigment, lips, brains, genitals, blacks' apparent ability to handle pain better than whites are all cited as proof of this never-changing conclusion. In this regard, it's very much like the creationist movement, which has considerably changed its arguments over the last 150 years without ever changing their conclusions. Likewise, consider the statements made by Aristotle in Politics. For that some should rule and others be ruled is a thing not only necessary, but expedient. And from the hour of their birth, some are marked out for subjection, others for rule. From the Politics. The essential conclusion for all races that they are naturally superior is an old one. It goes back to ancient tribal times. One value of the older and discredited racial theories, however, is that they show us how scientists' biases can inadvertently influence their work. In his widely acclaimed book, The Mismeasure of Man, Stephen Jay Gould, a famous American paleontologist that probably everybody's aware of, goes through Paul Broca's data and experiments and discovers that just about every mistake Broca made in his attempt to measure the insides of skulls was made in favor of his theory that whites had larger skulls and were therefore smarter. Paul Broca and Gobineau were not unique in their time. I don't think people realize just how strong racism was. Consider the following quote from Abraham Lincoln at the Douglas debates. There is a physical difference between the white and black races which I believe will forever forbid the two races living together on terms of social and political equality. And inasmuch as they cannot so live, while they do remain together, there must be the position of superior and inferior. And I, as much as any other man, am in favor of having the superior position assigned to the white race. Or consider this more private jotting scribbled on a fragment of papers in 1859. Negro equality? Fudge! How long in the government of a God great enough to make and rule the universe shall there continue knaves to vend and fools to equip a low piece of demagogism as this? Finally, I would just like to point out that even amongst the abolitionists, those wonderful people who fought tirelessly to free the slaves, even among these good people, the idea that blacks were equal was repugnant. Egalitarians were extremely rare. The purpose of this is to help explain the social context that scientific racism arose in. The three greatest naturalists of the 19th century did not hold blacks in high esteem. George Cuvier, Charles Darwin, and J.F. Loombach. These beliefs were not the result of objective study, but part of a shared belief system common to the culture. This harks back to what I said in the last video about the causality of scientific racism. Namely, the racism precedes the necessary justifications that arise from science, religion, and philosophy. Contemporary arguments are essentially Gobinist. Gobinet was a French aristocrat, most famous for his racialist theory of the Aryan master race, and exploited and perverted to an extraordinary degree by Hitler and the Nazis. The Gobinist version of mental testing, using the enterprise to argue for innate and ineradicable differences in general intelligence among human groups, relies upon four sequential and interrelated premises. Each must be true individually, and all the linkages must hold as well, or else the entire edifice collapses. In other words, to characterize of the four arguments in a word or two, human intelligence must be abstractable, rankable, highly heritable, and immutable, at least effectively immutable. If any of these assumptions fails, the entire argument and associated political agenda go belly up. But before we even get to these propositions, we have to examine race. Is it a meaningful and useful term? Or is it at best a nebulous concept with little or no real usefulness in the sciences? So in the next video, we'll look at race. We'll look at both the conceptualization of race as well as its reification.
Deep in the heart, the darkness of Marlowe and Kurtz. They were looking for freaks, they were looking for firsts. From the Congo to U.S., the tribes of St. Louis, the white man forgets Ota Benga's name. But there were debts unpaid, you were shuffled around. And before too long, you were monkey house bound. A little man's got a strange fate, with an orangutan roommate. He never even knew Ota Benga's name. From this native land of darkness to the country of the free, in the interest of science and of broad humanity, brought we little Ota Benga, dwarfed and without guile, scarcely more than ape or monkey, yet a man the while. So to tutor and enlighten, fit him for a nobler sphere, show him ways of truth and knowledge, teach the freedom we have here in this land of foremost progress. In this wisdom's ripest age, we have placed him in high honor, in a monkey's cage. Mid companions we provide amidst gorillas, chimpanzees. He's content, wherefore decry them when he seems at ease. So he chatters and he jabbers in his jargon, asking not but for money, 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 just as we have taught. Somewhere your body rests in a nice white suit, but they stripped you down, down, down to the roots. The roots. Well, they can laugh till it hurts. The bones down deep in the dirt. I hope one night they wake up screaming your name.